It sounded good. They were swinging.
Yeah.
Thanks,
That sounded good, man. That's a great job of direction. It's fantastic, man. Thank y'all. Great, Vic. Everybody, it was beautiful. Y'all got them playing some good solos too. I was hip.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like my little drummer in his living room.
Yeah. Where's he at? Is he here?
I don't know, but I loved him.
And Eli in the bathroom. I love that.
Come on, you can't beat that.
Yeah, when you already know Eli.
Yeah, it was great. Fantastic, y'all.
Thank you. Hey, Wynn, I want to introduce you real quick to some of the folks here. The director of the group and our director of programming for Joy is Mr. Gary Cordell. I think you've met Gary before. He's up in the upper left-hand side, you know, for me. And below him is our executive director, Donnie Thompson. And Kurt Miller he's a mentor for the program. He used to play with my dad. He's a phenomenal trombone player. And he's the one doing all the sound, recording, and video editing and all that stuff for the kids. And he's now our vice president of Joy. He's a great guy. So I just want to introduce both Wynton and Victor to all these guys real quick.
Who is Victor?
He doesn't know who I am. That's okay. But you know, I've gotten used to that. Time always heals all wounds.
It exposes all wounds. That was really beautiful. Great. Fantastic. That made me feel great.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on. Kids, I want you to realize something, man. The relationships that you're developing now are going to last, some of them for the rest of your lives. And Victor Goines and Wynton Marsalis are examples of this. They actually went, I think, to elementary school together, right, Vic?
Oh, kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
Oh, my God. That's
Goes
great.
all the way back.
You have no idea when it was, 1967. Think about that.
Wow.
Another world.
Anyway, we love seeing y'all. You all sound great. We love seeing our young people play that good with that level of seriousness. I'm not gonna hog everything. Y'all need to talk with Vic. He did a great job on this composition. I'm just proud of everybody. Beautiful, y'all.
Man, thank you for joining us, Wynton.
Thank you, Wynton.
Gary, I'd like to have Gary make the introductions and do his thing here before we get started with Vic.
Excellent. Well, you've already introduced me. I'm the director of programming and the leader for the Las Vegas Youth Jazz Orchestra. I think Kenny's already pretty much introduced everybody.
Gary.
Yes.
Let me interrupt for 1 second. Sitting with Gary, we have one of our mentors for the program. His wife, she's a violinist in town. We've done recordings together, and she's mentored in the program as well. Ms. Lauren Cordell. I forgot to introduce Lauren. Excuse me, Lauren. Excuse me, Gary. Sorry, man.
No worries.
Okay, go ahead, man. Sorry.
So, like you said, you've already introduced everybody. I just want to let everyone know that the Jazz Outreach Initiative is a nonprofit organization based in Las Vegas, Nevada. Jazz Outreach Initiative raises public awareness of jazz through concerts, classes, and community building. We bring a world of creativity and higher consciousness to students, performers, and the audience. Joy was founded to fill a need in the community for greater exposure to jazz studies and awareness, focusing on students of all ages. Through festivals, clinics, and other outreach programs, Joy celebrates the great American art form by promoting it to the next generation of performers, audiences, and consumers. Our motto is, let's make a difference. The last person I'd like to introduce is the person that makes this all possible. He is the president and artistic director for the Jazz Outreach Initiative. And my best friend is Mr. Kenny Ranfin.
Thanks, Gary. It's great to see everybody. I'm so proud of all of you. You're doing a great job. You pulled this together with no rehearsals, really. We rehearsed this piece twice in February, and we've had to go online. We've talked about the music. You put in the homework. You did your jobs. You worked hard, and it's wonderful, man. It's really inspiring for me personally to see what you guys are capable of. And I want to thank you. This is our last event for the school year before we move on to the next semester. So thank you all for being a part of the program. It's just been a joy, no pun intended, for me to get to work with all of you, and really truly inspiring. So I want to introduce our special guest of honor, the gentleman who wrote this piece as part of a suite, Untamed Elegance, that we performed with Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra. Many of you have heard it. You heard it online, and you all requested to play this. You guys wanted to play this piece when we started this orchestra. If you remember, I asked you, is there anything you guys want me to try and get for you to play? And this was the first piece that was requested. It's just an honor to be able to introduce my colleague, my dear friend, Mr. Victor Goines. Vic?
Thank you so much, Kenny. And it's a pleasure for me to be here. Congratulations on all the success you all have had. It's obviously been a great event because you can hear it in the music. All the talk is great, but the music tells all of the story you want to hear about it. So to all my students, congratulations on a great job. To my director, Gary, and Kurt, and Donnie, and Lauren, I think it was. Yeah. Congratulations on all your mentorship to the students. It shows in terms of what we've heard in the music and the fact that they're here today. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Vic. So as we go, I'm going to ask Vic some questions. Kids, I want you guys to think of any questions you have, because we're in the presence of greatness with Victor Goines here and Wynton being here. So if you guys have any questions, think of them now, because this is a great opportunity for you guys to really, truly learn from a master. I would like to ask Vic about his process, how he came up with this piece, what the inspiration for it was, and your process for writing a suite and movements in this specific movement for this piece.
Well, that's a great question, and I appreciate you asking. What I have learned throughout all of my education, but what has been reinforced in my time that I've spent with the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra and the Wynton Marsalis Septet, is that my good friend and our artistic director of Jazz at Lincoln Center, Wynton Marsalis, whenever he does a piece, he does extensive research about the genre, about the period, or whatever aspect of music is going to be dealing with, whether it's Blood on the Fields, which was about slavery, or city movements, or whatever the piece. I've seen him doing this on so many occasions, do the research. So as I was asked to write a piece about the jazz age, I needed to know more about the jazz age, the 1920s. So I began to do all the homework that I could possibly get my hands on within the deadline that I had to write the piece. So just reading and listening and whatnot, and also checking out recordings of great writers from that time period, from the swing era, of dance bands. Fletcher Henderson was a great influence on me, because I know I'm actually probably walking the line to some of the things that sound so much like Fletcher. But if you're gonna be influenced by somebody, be influenced by the greatest version of that you can get your hands on, Fletcher Henderson, Duke Ellington, all the great bands of that time. So it was a lot of research in terms of reading, checking out things about the political times that was going on, the movement that was taking place. It was a women's movement in the 1920s up to the Great Depression. It's ironic that here we are 100 years later and we have another women's movement going along right now. But all of those things played a role in terms of what was taking place in Untamed Elegance. Now, I also will add that the title, I cannot take the credit for that. There was a young lady who worked for Jazz at Lincoln Center by the name of Sarah Villaggio. And the great thing about being with Jazz at Lincoln Center is we have a lot of support in the band, but also the administrative components of our organization. And as musicians, we spend a lot of time doing our music, but there's a lot of other things that can fall through the cracks if we're not careful, just the administrative timelines involved on it. So while I was working on the music, Sarah was constantly asking me, what is going to be the title for this song? So I couldn't come up with a title for this suite. So she proposed 5 titles for me, I think it was. And ultimately, when Untamed Elegance came along, and after the research I had done, I decided that would be the title. So it was Sarah Villaggio who actually came up with the title for the piece. And as a result, the movements came out of that particular kind of, title that was going on in different aspects of what took place during the 1920s up to 1932.
That's great. Can you tell us a little bit about the title of this movement, where that came from?
Sure. So it's always great when you're doing readings if you could find good catchphrases to kind of move you along in terms of writing. So I was reading something about what was taking place in our country in that time period. And one of our presidents, I'm not the best history person in the world, but I do remember the person saying that the business of America is business. Now, it's ironic that the 1920s ran us into the Great Depression. Obviously, the business thing wasn't that great, but I thought that was a great way to start off this particular suite. So I started off with the business of America is business. Just to give you the rest of the movements, the second movement of this piece is called The Elephant in the Room. And it came as a result of the change of power of presidency at that time, and they were having a dialogue. And it was an awkward moment. And one of the presidents said, it would be great if I had a pet elephant. So I thought that the elephant in the room, because it was that awkward moment. And we all use that phrase on different occasions. And then the third movement of the piece, if I remember, I think it's 5 movements. It's been a little while since we played it now. Then the third movement of the piece is entitled Untamed Elegance. That's the title cut. And it's called The It Thing. And it was written for...
Vegas profession.
I'm sorry?
No, sir. Sorry.
That's okay. And it was written for the actress Clara Bow. And she was like the it girl of that time. She was the beauty of the 1920s that everybody really fell head over heels for. And so that was the ballad of the piece called Untamed Elegance, The It Thing. And then following that, well, we know that the 1920s was the point where prohibition was taking place. So you can't have the 1920s without talking about alcohol. And there was a lot of things going on with drinking and all of that. So as a result of a lot of intake of alcoholic beverages, people can tend to be drunk as a skunk. And that was that movement. And then the final movement of the piece I called the bold, how did I put it? The bold something and naked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wynton, you remember that title at the end? The bold,
no.
naked, and sensational.
No, I don't remember it. No. Neither do you. You don't remember it.
It was called Bold, Naked, and Sensational. And this is why. It had nothing to do really with literal nakedness of our time. But during that time, for women, it was seen to be unladylike if you exposed any part of your bodies. Well, dresses became shorter. They were above the knees. Bathing suits started showing more skins. In fact, one time we were traveling to Canada, and I went to a museum that had an exhibit about shoes. And I didn't realize that shoes was such an important part of the 1920s. So I still want to write that 6th movement that has to do with shoes, but that'll come a little bit later, maybe along the way. So those are the 5 movements of Untamed Elegance.
Thanks, Vic. By the way, you know, one of my very favorite things that we play with a band is the movement, the ballad, Untamed Elegance. It's just absolutely gorgeous piece. If you kids haven't heard that one, check it out. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube somewhere. But Gary, can you introduce the soloists who are here and our lead players to Victor? I would like him to meet them. And if you guys have any questions for Mr. Goines, now is a great time.
Yeah, so real quick, our soloist for this piece, the first soloist we had was was Aries Harper on trumpet.
Mm-hmm.
And our second soloist we had was, I don't believe he's here, I think he's on vacation with his family in Utah right now, was Raleigh Birmingham on trombone. The third soloist was our lead altoist, Will Meads. He's here. Hey, Will. And the last soloist that played after that short interlude was on trombone, Eli McAjee. And just real quick, one of the main reasons that we played this tune was when we were starting rehearsals, Eli came to me and said, I want to play Business of America as business. And I said, okay. You know, because I had all kinds of stuff going on. And he goes, no, I want to play Business of America is Business. And so Kenny, you know, arranged to get it. And it was one of the tunes that the band just clicked with. We had a couple of tunes and the band just took to this tune, and we knew that it was going to be one in our repertoire and it was going to be on our concert. And obviously everything, you know, got canceled. And so we slated it as one of our 3 songs that we wanted to record with the band this semester. So
yeah, man. Thanks, Gary. So I just saw a note from Keller to everybody. He's got to leave. Keller, do you have any questions for Mr. Goines or Mr. Marsalis before you split? Keller is our lead trumpet player.
Nothing specific. Sorry, go ahead.
Keller is our lead trumpet player. He's going to be a senior this year. Is that right, Keller? He's just finished his junior year. He's going into a senior year at LVA. He studies with Wes Marshall. I've given him a couple lessons. I think Gary has as well. Fine young trumpet player, and I'm sorry that you have to split early. Eli, did you have to split early too?
No, I'm good.
Okay, good. So Keller, since you got to split early, if you got any questions, anything, you know, to say to anybody, man, I'd love to hear from you.
No questions specifically, but I just want to thank everyone, especially you, Kenny. I remember you talking about this program since August of last year, and watching it all come together. And there's a question about if we can go to play throughout COVID, but everyone in their hard work, especially Mr. Kurt Miller, volunteering his time to record. I'd just like to thank everyone for an amazing year, and we will be back next year, and I'm very excited to play next year in this orchestra. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Goines and Mr. Marsalis, for joining us today. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Well,
Thanks, Keller.
You played extraordinary, just really great lead for the band to follow.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Continue to do that, and I would recommend that you listen to people like our lead player Ryan Kaiser, who's a great lead player and a great soloist, because that type of solo ability will only give you a certain freedom for the band to be able to follow you with much more detail.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Keller, who's your favorite jazz trumpet player to listen to?
Gosh, that's hard. It changes every day. Jeez, Louise, man, I gotta go with. Oh, that's a hard question. Miles is king. I gotta say Miles is king.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you guys so much.
When I first met you, you were working on Lee Morgan's solo.
Yeah, I remember that. Anyway, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, man. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Keller.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. I'd like to open up for questions. Anybody have any questions? Will, I know you always got something to say. Kai, Eli, you guys, Aries, our soloists especially.
Yeah.
I want to speak for the trombone soloists who played the first trombone solo. From what I understand, he hasn't soloed anything before, right, Gary?
No, he actually reached out to me and said that, you know, this song spoke to him, and he's never really stepped up and soloed, and he reached out to me privately and said, I would really like to solo on this tune, and I promise you I'll put the time in and, you know, and really work on it. And, you know, how I was like, absolutely, I'd love to have you play on this, Raleigh. And I thought he did a great job, you know.
Yeah.
Very confidently. I was very proud of him.
Yeah, me too. And I love that. I mean, he's been pretty shy from what I understand. I've been, you know, Skyping into the rehearsals or whatever. So I haven't been there in person to work with you guys. Gary has, but I hadn't heard him solo on anything before. And the fact that he really wanted to solo on this song, and he took the initiative to reach out to Gary and say, hey man, can I blow on this? I really love this tune. I love that. You know, we want to give everybody a chance to play. And I'm a little disappointed that he couldn't be here today, but he's on vacation. I understand. But just any of you students, if there's a song you want to play on, let us know. we want you to play. We want to work with you. And as we develop this program, we're going to work more on improvisation as well as part of the program, not just focusing on big band playing. But I love that he really wanted to play on Victor's tune. It's an testament to how great this song is and how people identify with it.
Well, and adding to what you just mentioned, not only if there's one song you want to play on, I encourage you all to want to play on every song.
Yeah.
And don't worry about qualifying while you're playing. Just play. And after you play, then you can assess what you did and determine how well you did on that time, or maybe it didn't go as well as you thought. But the key to succeeding is to fail along the way. You got to have some failures along the way in order to succeed, or else you won't have any kind of yardsticks to determine what was good and what was not. But if you're only playing to try to sound good, that might work a little bit along the way, but you have to have other motivations and play on everything you possibly can. Play every single song that you can get your hand on. It's going to only make you better.
Yes, sir. So, Aries, I want to go to you now if we could, man. For those who don't know and may have heard the recording of Armageddon that the band did, Aries played the lead voice on that. He played Marcus Printup's part, played the melody on Armageddon, which is a pretty tough part to play. And I remember when I first played that for Marcus, he was very impressed by this young man and how he approached the melody, the vibration he had in his sound, and his phrasing, the vibrato he used. And the same thing when you played your solo on this tune, Aries. I'm really glad that you soloed on this song. Now you're going to be going next year to UNLV to study, right?
Yeah, I'm going to UNLV.
That's great. Congratulations on finishing high school. Yeah.
Thanks.
And so I want to see if you have any questions for Mr. Goines and talk about your playing a little bit on the solo, how you feel about it, and see if you got a question for Mr. Goines.
Yeah, this song was like it super spoke to me because I could just tell, I could hear the soul in it, the soul from the 20s, and I could just hear the movements going on in every line of the song. And not only did I love soloing on it, but I loved like being a part of the section in it. And something that I really wanted to work on was trying to find my voice in it, because I kind of struggle and trying to find my own uniqueness in my playing. And that's why I love transcribing different people so much, as far as Harry James, and then I'll transcribe someone as far as Trombone Shorty, which are totally two different people, and like as far as playing. But that's my question, is how do I find my own voice in my soloing?
Well, you are your own voice. Nobody else can be you. And as long as you keep playing, the question is, can you become comfortable with your own voice? It's like when you hear your voice on the answering machine, you say, is that what I sound like?
Right.
And then after you hear it more and more, hopefully it improves. You've heard great musicians. I mean, John Coltrane was the epitome of his practice was always to try to get a more beautiful sound. I mean, he just constantly, he was driving at that. And everyone drives for that particular more beautiful sound. But the reality is embracing your own voice and knowing how you sound. In fact, not to get too philosophical, but you will never hear the true voice that you have, because whenever you play, you always play away from yourself, and everybody hears the true you. You hear a reflection or a recording or a duplication of you. So what you can do is play the best version of that and start to try to develop it along the way by listening to yourself through recordings and things like that, and become comfortable with what your voice is. Now, the vocabulary that you talk about of different genres of music, whether it's from Louis Armstrong to the current trumpet players of this time, those are things you want to try to develop the vocabulary so that you can be able to articulate music from any period, whether it's the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, on up. And you hear Mr. Rampton, you hear Mr. Marsalis, you hear so many trumpet players, and specifically in our orchestra, being able to articulate music from different periods. And just as a musician, that's so important, because if you really want to be a musician, you can survive doing one thing well, but you can survive better if you do a lot of things well. It's like having a diversified portfolio of stocks. If you have all really, really great stocks, you're bound to do well. So learn the music of Lee Morgan, learn the music of Harry James, learn the music of Louis Armstrong, Buddy Bolden, Wynton Marsalis, Kenny Rampton, Ryan Kaiser. We don't have enough time for me to name all the trumpet players, but learn all of their music. One thing for sure, like Wynton's father used to always say, if you learn the music, you'll never be bored.
Yeah.
So you played a great, great solo. I checked out the video, and I wanted to see what was going on with the band before we arrived here. I like what you did. You had a lot of blues in your sound. You had a good feeling of swinging. You had syncopation. And for me, those are the three things that define jazz, as per the words of the great John Lewis, the piano player for the Modern Jazz Quartet. You have to have syncopation, the element of surprise, which is what syncopation is. The blues has to always be in the music, and the suggestion of swing. And you were doing that. And the fourth that we had in that Jazz at Lincoln Center is improvisation, which is what you were doing. So, you know, you were playing the sound of jazz when you were soloing. So I encourage for you now to just continue to do that, and don't become complacent. Just always stay positive, optimistic, and no matter what the obstacles are, just keep moving forward through them and develop all your aspects of the trumpet. You know, take out those Clark technical studies, take out the Auburn methods, go through your lyrical slurs, and then when you get all of those together, go find somebody else's methods and start learning them too.
Yeah, man.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vic. The next person I'd like to introduce was a soloist, play the alto solo. He also plays lead alto, and he graduated this semester as well. Congratulations, Will, on graduating. And next year he's going to be going to Michigan State. So he'll be under the tutelage of Rodney Whitaker and his program over there. And so I want to introduce Mr. Will Meads to you, Victor. And Will, you got any questions for Mr. Goines?
I had so much to say. I had so much. I just want to start out by saying that I'm in awe right now. And I know that I'm getting out a little bit, but I just want to say that you guys really brought me much joy and jazz. Everybody on call has maintained this level of time. And to have everybody on call, I really like, it's making this almost to I can't expect how happy I am to get everybody here. And to see Mr. Goines, Mr. Marsalis here to share the moment, it means a lot. But
Hey, Will.
I have two questions.
Will, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there any way you could get closer to a Wi-Fi signal? You're breaking up. I'm hearing about every third word. Is everybody else having that issue too with Will? Yeah, if you could get closer to the router, maybe it'll help so we can hear you better.
I'm so sorry. Can you guys? Is it better now? At least a little.
It is.
Yeah,
that's much better.
Thank you so much. But like I said, I just want to let you know that I'm genuinely very appreciative for what's happening right now. I'm very happy. But I have two questions for you, Mr. Goines. I was just wondering. I've observed the saxophone section by just watching videos on YouTube, and just you're really exploring and studying the music with the orchestra. And I was wondering, what is it like to sit there with like Sherman, Ted, Camille, and Paul, just like on a regular basis, just like to sit and just play music? And I was also really wondering, I know you guys compose for each other in the band, and I was wondering, do you have any good stories of the band sitting down with your chart and, you know, you getting somebody with the part you wrote, or, you know, just having a ball at rehearsal?
Some stories are better untold, but I can tell you a few things. One was a fanfare, but I'm not going to say anything else about that one. But sitting down with the band and the guys and the lady in the section over the periods of time that we've been together is extraordinary. Any and everybody who's in that orchestra and who has been in that orchestra, some have come and have gone, could and are leaders of different bands along the way. So it's a very unique opportunity to be in a band where you can almost play anything you want to play, and everybody in that band can cover their part with great technical facility and musical knowledge and historical perspective. So when you bring those kind of people together, there are a lot of other very, very good bands or even great bands that are performing all over the world. But I think that's the uniqueness of our organization and our orchestra, is that you have all of these fantastic musicians together, and you can play anything. Sky's the limit. So, and it's a constant learning environment from one another, because we all came to the music from different perspectives, whether it's through musical families or non-musical families, whether it's from the West Coast or the East Coast, from the North or the South, even coming through music or maybe not coming through music at all, which is the case with Camille Thurman, who went through, I think she called it geological sciences is her major. I came into music through music education, but I'm also a mathematician. We have so much information, so much scholarly knowledge in one location. You know, how else could we get to hang out with Ernie unless we knew Kenny Rampton? I mean, Sesame Street was one of our major performances. I mean, we had so much fun and learned so much music. And that's what that institution is, and that's what that orchestra is. It's an education. It's a constant education. So when we get to write, we often talk about the things that are unfamiliar to us. Being a woodwind player, that's my comfort level. So I write, when I'm writing for the woodwinds, I'm really, really comfortable. When I write for the brass, I understand the ranges and all of that in certain things, but there are also limitations I have. You know, the trombones, like for instance, for some reason, I really like trombone with a bucket mute. But the trombone players have been very clear. Don't write that high B flat in a bucket mute. It's the worst note on the trombone. They're very, very clear about it. Now I can write it, but then at the end, all it's gonna mean is that they're not going to play it. They're gonna actually change the part because they know better than I. So we pull upon each other's knowledge as we write. So it's nothing for me to call Mr. Rampton in the middle of day or night and say, can I do this on a trumpet? For instance, he's one of the foremost authorities on mutes. He's got mutes beyond, as well as the mutes that he's now manufacturing through his company. But so he knows a lot about mutes as well as everyone in our brass section. Rhythm section, you know, if I have a group that I'm trying to put together, I'll call Carlos Enriquez or something like that and say, what about this? Can we do this? Is this actually technically capable of being played? Now, I also don't necessarily say for someone who's less than you, I say for you. But then the final thing is that we don't write based upon what we think the instrument technically can play. We write what we want to play. And then we ask the players, figure out how to play it. That's our jobs as players, to figure out how to play what our colleagues wrote for them. And in 26 years of being with the orchestra, no one has ever said this is not playable. We often say you should go to bed at night so that we can sleep in the day because you wrote something that's unplayable. But we seldom say don't write this or don't write that. We just say write it and then we're going to figure it out. And that's a unique privilege of being in a band with those kind of musicians and personnel around us.
Yeah. Thanks, Vic. I can attest to that. Like in this band, I've never been in a band like it where there's so many composers, and we all, not just composers, educators, brilliant instrumentalists, great improvisers, just so many levels to this band, and we all inspire each other. We all learn from each other. We all lift each other up. We're all becoming, I know I'm becoming a better educator because I've done master classes or workshops with Victor or with Wynton or with Marcus Printup. You know, I learned from everybody in this band, and that, you know, goes to writing for each other and seeing how we all write and learning from each other. It's really a unique, incredible experience being a part of this band, and it's so inspirational. You know, I've learned so much from Vic. It's really pretty cool, man. Great questions, Will.
So if I could just share one thing with Will, I really liked what you were playing. I dug your solo, I dug your sound, and but now I'm going to speak saxophone to you. It's the two of us, you know, because as saxophone players, we sometimes have the luxury of pressing certain keys and we get the note, whatever that is. 1, 2, 3 on the left hand, we get a G. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, we get an E. A trumpet player, A trombone player, they're dealing in the world of partials. They have to hear the note, they have to articulate the note, they have to play the note. So when we're playing, I think we have to be more clear about articulation, because the articulations allow us to be able to have a better grip on the rhythms. So when we're playing, or when you're playing in this time, in your case, if you're solo, I would encourage you to have much more attack on your note, unless you have a very specific intent of playing in a legato format. And obviously, as the tempo gets faster, the selectiveness of when we play become based upon the melodic contours of the line that we're trying to execute in our improvisations. But remember, articulation allows us to have a grip on the swing. Otherwise, it's like a rope slipping through your hands if you're just slurring all the time. Does that make sense? Okay, good, good. You sounded
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that beyond a doubt. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
That's a great analogy, Vic. That's a really great analogy. And I'm just looking at Will. Will, I got to tell you, man, I appreciate your enthusiasm so much, man. Like you just look so happy to be able to communicate with Victor right now. I love seeing your face. The next person I want to go to is young man who played the next solo on the piece, played trombone solo. He's going to be going to Juilliard next year, and I've watched him grow from the time he was a freshman in high school. Wonderful young musician. I couldn't be prouder of him. Eli, what you got?
Hey, everyone. First, thank you all. I'm extremely grateful to have been able to share this experience with all of you and to have played with all of you, and now to have such great people to ask questions to and, you know, rap with a little bit. My question would be actually regarding the baritone saxophone player who I think played some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard, Joe Temperley. And I was just curious if you had any stories or incredible lessons that he may have taught you and other members of the band.
Whew, countless. You know, to be in the room with Joe was always a lesson, and there was always a story to be told. He epitomizes what it is to be a jazz musician. And if Kenny and I know Wynton knows the story specifically, so he might be the best one to talk about it. But I think it was he and Marcus Prinoff having a dialogue about Joe. And Joe is from Scotland. He was from Scotland. So, Wynton, are you on the phone? Okay, he may have stepped away.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Tell me about that part where you say you and Marcus were talking about Joe, and you said, isn't it something that a guy from Scotland embraces American music more than American?
Yeah, Marcus said that. He said it's funny, we got a guy from Scotland who plays the music better than we playing it.
You know, and Joe
because
says, go ahead.
Yeah, Joe had integrity. You see, we're struggling with that in our country right now, in general. Joe had a lot of integrity. He grew up very poor from a mining community in Scotland. So that's all I'm gonna say. Vic, you answer the questions. I just want to check y'all out.
I appreciate it. So Joe was the first one at every gig and the last to leave. Always. He would practice more than anybody in the band. Never complained. Never ever complained about it. I will tell you one funny story. And we were playing a piece called Six Syncopated Movements. It's a piece Wynton wrote. That's the name of the piece. And the video we did was called Accent on an Offbeat. It was written for a collaboration with the New York City Ballet. So as the Jazz LA Center Orchestra continued to play after that piece was written, you know, we still played some of the small group music. So Joe never told us how old or young he was. So on one occasion, we were playing this piece that would go through these mixed meters. And at that time, we were writing Wynton was writing really complex rhythmic music. So we were doing express crossing, I think it's called. And man, the rhythm just turns around all the time. So, you know, it was challenging. So on that specific day, it was a challenging day for Joe. And in the early days, you know, we used to ride each other a little bit about, hey man, come on man, get that part. So anyway, that day came and went. When we came back the next day, Wynton looked at Joe. He said, man, I didn't know you were 65. I
Hold
thought
on,
you
wait,
were like 50.
wait. You're not telling it right, man.
Well, tell me
Hold
right.
on.
Come on in
Look,
here. Tell me right.
let me tell you what happened. I was cussing and screaming. I used to be cussing and screaming and hollering
I
in
didn't want to
rehearsal.
say all of that now. Come on.
But just tell the truth about it. I'd be cussing and going off on people in rehearsals. You know, if you haven't been around me, you wasn't used to it. You'd be like, damn. But I mean, Joe, of course, was my man. He knew me. So I was just cussing and going off. So Victor told me after rehearsal, he said, hey, man, do you know that Joe is 64? And I didn't know Joe was 64. I literally thought he was, maybe in his 40s. You know, Joe stayed young for a long time. So when Victor told me that, he was telling me that for the reason of saying, don't talk to Joe like that. You can cuss at us, but he not like our contemporary. Show some respect. So the next day in rehearsal in front of the band, I said, Joe, I didn't know you were 64. But let me apologize for the way I was addressing you. And then Joe cussed me out.
That's great.
And he was a great teller of limericks. Man, we love to hear you tell limericks. We can't talk about them online right now.
Yeah, we can't repeat those right now.
No, but and he would tell about all the people he played along with, and over the years, his experience with the Ellington Orchestra. I mean, just so many. I mean, but when he played a ballad, like one of the last ballads he played with us, I think is called "Your Love Is Like a Red, Red Rose." And he just played the melody by himself. It was a concert featuring him. It was just phenomenal. It was unbelievable. And he would play Single Petal of a Rose. I'm gonna tell you that story. One time we were on the road and a couple was at a concert, and Joe and Dan Nimmer would play Single Petal of a Rose. Joe would play it on bass clarinet and Dan accompanied him on piano. And after the gig, the couple came up to Joe and said, I'd like for you to play that at our wedding. Now, we weren't in the US, they lived in Europe. So they hired Dan and Joe to fly to Europe to play one song at their wedding, A Single Petal of a Rose. And that was it. That's how great he played it.
I gotta chime in a little bit about Joe here, Vic. About that particular song. Before I was in the band full time, I was subbing for Sean Jones on a tour. And I'll never forget the moment. I can't remember what city we were in, but they played that piece, man, and I started crying on stage. It was so incredibly beautiful. I've never been that moved emotionally in performance in my life. To hear him play Single Petal of a Rose with Dan Nimmer, the duo, when he played on bass clarinet, he had so much emotion, so much feeling and meaning and intention in his sound and his tone alone. But to hear that song, hear him play that song, man, it changed my life. It made me understand really what the purpose of music is. You know, it just took it to another level. You know, Joe Temperley was phenomenal. That's a great question, Eli. Thank you for bringing him up, man, because I miss him. We all do. I remember one time I heard him playing long tones before a gig. I was on one side of the stage, and I thought he was right behind me. Like his tone was so full. He was playing long tones on the bass clarinet, and I turned around, he wasn't there. And I followed the sound. He was on the other side of the stage playing long tones, but his tone was so pure and full. It just had such a presence. It like came and tapped on my shoulder, man, on the other side of the stage. Unbelievable musician in person. Highest degree of integrity. Great question, Eli. Thank you, man. So let's see. I'd like to ask the person who's come the farthest, who signed on here at 5 a.m. He's been a part of the program all year, and his family just moved to Japan, and we're going to miss him next year, but it's great to have you here, Kite. Thanks for coming on. It's great to see you. Do you have any questions for Mr. Goines?
Oh, yeah. So first, I just want to thank this whole organization, especially the band leaders who've been just putting their hard work in. And this virtual experience, I mean, it's been pretty great, actually. And just this whole thing through this year has been really great, and it's been memorable for me. So I just want to thank you all. And for Mr. Goines, so what inspired and motivated you to pursue jazz, like as a career in the future?
Well, I have a very clear remembrance of what that was. First of all, I started playing clarinet at a very young age, and I thought I would be in a classical orchestra. That's what I was really aspiring to be, a classical clarinetist. From a musical point of view, I was lucky, just like you all are. I had great teachers, such great teachers that for those who are still with us, I am still in touch with them, and I visit and call them on a regular basis. So I encourage you to not take these relationships that you have with your mentors and stay in touch with them, because as someone said at the beginning, as they were referencing Wynton and I, the relationships you have now are relationships that you can have all your life if you maintain and manage those relationships. It doesn't matter how close in terms of proximity of physical location you are, especially with technology today. And rather than wonder how someone is doing, pick up the phone and call them and say, how are you doing? And then you will know that they're doing well, or if it's not that, if that's not the case, then you will know for yourself. Just like most of you in high school, I played in a high school jazz ensemble. I had a band director by the name of Carl Bluen, who was into the music of Count Basie, which I was lucky about that when everybody else was playing quote unquote stage band arrangements. But so he made sure I knew about Count Basie's music. And we used to play in the all-state ensembles. We, Branford, Wynton, myself, Terrence Blanchard, Donald Harrison, we all used to audition to be in those type of ensembles. So one time I went by Wynton's house, man, and we were going to practice, play some duets or something like that, like people normally do. And he said, hey man, check this out. So he took out a recording of Coltrane's sound. No, Giant Steps, Giant Steps. And he had a C trumpet at the time. And his dad had this fake book with all of these solos in it. And he took out I know he's probably laughing because he said, do you still remember that? And I remember it like yesterday. So he took out this book of Train's transcribed solo that someone else had done. And he played the whole solo of Giant Steps on the C trumpet at the age of 14. Now, there were a lot of different things happening up in there that impacted me. One, I had someone who was my age who was playing the trumpet like that. That was phenomenal. That was really inspiring for me. But in a bigger picture, it was the first time I really heard John Coltrane. And that blew my mind. Because when I heard John Coltrane, I said, man, that's what I want to be able to do. I want to be able to play like that. And then the second question came up. Can I ever play like that? So it was kind of going both ways for me. So from that point on, I started chasing the train, started chasing jazz forever. And while I still like studying classical music and I still try to listen to it as much as I can and practice it, jazz has been what I've been inspired to do. I've had great teachers. One of my most outstanding relationships was with his father, Ellis Marsalis. I spent an enormous amount of time with him, knowing him in high school, knowing him in college, while I was in college, playing in his band, teaching with him, while going to graduate school when he taught at Virginia Commonwealth University, teaching with him at the University of New Orleans. I mean, when you have that kind of person around you, he was just a man of so much integrity and inspiring. He was very truthful with me. He was truthful with me when I didn't want to hear what the truth was occasionally. Fortunately, it was only once or twice he had to tell me something like that. But he wasn't beyond telling me. And we were still good friends after that, you know. But being around those kind of people really inspired me. Obviously, my family was very supportive of what I've done along the way. But being in the circle of musicians where we had supportive, competitive type of environments going on. Even in the case of, we had our own little funk bands at the time that we all played in, you know, and those kind of things were competitive. And some people made more money than some of us made. I'm gonna be anonymous. But, you know, Wynton's band was very popular at that time. But it was just an overall community experience. And I'm a student of our community, just like you are. Exactly like you are, because every musician who was in that New Orleans community, which is where I'm at right now, I'm in New Orleans. Every musician in that community, I consider to be a teacher of mine. James Black, George French, Jermaine Basil, the list goes on and on. And then all of my good friends were teachers of mine too. So those kind of experiences have been motivating for me. And it's the kind of thing that when times get rough, and I think about those type of influences and support systems, it allows me to keep going. And in a time period like right now, that's really important because we all communicate still. The people I mentioned, but more importantly, the Jazz LA Casino Orchestra, we still communicate during this time too. We stay in touch with each other. We try to make sure we all are good. We stay in touch with each other on special events, whether it's birthday of kids or if family is ill or something like that, we stay in touch. So all those things have been really important to help me be the musician I am and the person I am today.
Yeah, Vic. Thank you, man.
Thank you
Kai,
so much.
great question, Kai. Now, Kai, what year are you going into in high school?
I'll be in my junior year this year.
Okay. So now, some just came to me, you've moved to Japan, so you weren't going to be part of the program moving forward. But given the unique situation that we're in, since we're most likely going to be going online for the program, I don't see why you can't be a part of it going forward. So let's think about that. If you want to stay in the band, since we're not going to be meeting in person anyways, it would be, difficult to figure out, with the time zone difference and all that kind of stuff. But I would love to have you stay in the band because it's a pretty unique situation now. So we're not going to be able to rehearse in person anyways. So think about that and let's talk about that later, okay? Talk it over with your parents.
Yeah, that'll be my honor. Thank you so much.
All right.
I'll definitely,
All right. So let's move over to our youngest member of the band now. I think he's 12 now, young trumpet player. Actually, Wynton, you've met him. You gave him a lesson a while ago backstage in Arizona, I think it was. Kai, you got any questions for Mr. Goines?
Yes, I do.
I knew you would.
So when you were talking about jazz in the 1920s, and when you look at jazz from a historical standpoint, we had like the Civil Rights Movement, Harlem Renaissance, things like that, the Great Depression. So I was wondering how all those historical events have influenced how you play and how historical events will influence how we will continue playing today.
Man, that's a deep question. Come on, how old are you?
11.
You're 11, you asking that question. My 11-year-old nephew doesn't ask that question. My 11-year-old nephew asked me, how do I turn on the Xbox? So,
sorry, I aged you. I thought you were 12.
Okay, my birthday's in a few days, so.
When's your birthday?
July 22nd.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, cool.
Happy birthday, man.
Early birthday, yeah.
Happy
birthday.
Thank you.
Well, everything around us has an impact on what we do. I mean, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of that. And the question is, how do we come out of that? We can let it impact us negatively, like we have seen happen so many times in our country over the past, century easily, talking about the 1920s to the 2020. And unfortunately, inside of all we've learned, we haven't learned anything because we're back to some of the same ugliness we've had back then. But the music has always been a positive something that have allowed us to be uplifted and keep going forward. The blues, it provides a certain optimism about us. As people, it tells stories about us all the time. It allows us to be able to cleanse our bodies and at the same time recover from tragedies that can be so difficult, not only for ourselves, but that same blues we can play for other people to help uplift them. So as artists, we have to continue to play. You hear it all the time that the arts are more important now than ever before, and seem like it's a repetitive type of statement, but it is true. And most people don't realize, it's like any kind of medication or vaccine, they don't realize the importance of it until after either it has healed them or until something tragically has happened, then they say, man, I wish I had done this, or I wish this would have been the case. So as musicians and artists, and as jazz musicians, it's important that we continue to do what we do so that we can uplift the spirits of those who are around us so that they can realize what the blues say, which is, yeah, times are bad. They're really bad. We're not together. We're not playing together. But if we keep moving forward, we will get back together. It's bad now, but it will be better. There's tomorrow. It has a certain optimism in it. And to quote my good friend, he often says the blues is like a vaccine. You have to get the blues to relieve yourself from the blues. If you have the flu, you take a flu vaccine shot so you won't get the flu, or to minimize how much you get the flu. Well, we have to play the blues so that we can get out of having the blues. We have to keep playing the music no matter what. There's going to be times when it's going to seem hard, but when it gets hard, keep playing. In fact, when I was your age, I had a football coach who would always tell me, he would say, winners never quit and quitters never win. Then he would ask the question, which one are you? And he would just be quiet. He left it all in my corner. So now, that was a long time ago. And when things get hard and I'm in the face of adversities, I always say, winners never quit, quitters never win. Which one am I? And I always go to the winner part of it. And I just keep fighting through it no matter what it is. So keep playing.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
Vic.
you.
That's great.
Yeah,
Great
'cause-
question. Great question,
Thank
Kai.
you. Yeah, because I know it's kind of been hard for everybody, especially in a time like this, to keep practicing when with jazz music, it's about, being together and playing together. But now we're all isolated, so it kind of, it's harder to get that sort of feeling when you're playing with somebody because you can't do it in the same way. So, yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I made a decision when we came off the road on March 6th from Europe. We flew in from Spain, I think. We were seemed like we were steps in front of the pandemic. We were literally running away from it almost. We came back to the US, within a week, they had shut down the country. But I made a commitment. I said, when I come out of COVID-19, I didn't think it would be as long as it is and will be. I said, but when I come out of here, I'm going to be better than when I went in. I'm going to study, not just music, all kind of things, technology. I'm actually in school working on a PhD as well. So I'm always studying. That's proven in photographs and everything else, if you get pictures of the band on the road. So I said I was going to be a better person coming out of this than when I went in. Because if we continue to work hard during this time period, when the human race starts up again, you're going to be at full speed and you won't be starting from a standstill. And how you exit the starting block determines, or at least has a great impact on where you might finish in the race. And you want to be continually moving. For me, COVID-19 wasn't a chance. It was a time we had to socially distance, but for me, it became a time to socially reconnect with all the texting that goes on and emails and things like that. I tell people now, you want to show our friendship? Call me. I'll do a Zoom conference call. I'll do a FaceTime. Let's socially reconnect. And that's what I've been doing during this time. When we first found out we wouldn't be able to play together for a period of time, and we be in the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, I called Wynton. I said, hey man, let's do a virtual recording together. He said, what do you mean? I said, we can all record our parts at home and send it to one central location, let somebody mix it and do it. He said, great. You write the first chorus of the blues. That's a typical, that's a typical
Oh, yeah,
way.
quarantine blues, yeah.
That's right. So he said, you write the first chorus. I said, okay. The first day passed, he called me back and said, you wrote that chorus? I said, no, man, it was just a day ago. He said, I'll write the first chorus. He wrote the first chorus and called me back in 2 hours. Here's mine. Okay, you do yours now. Did he call me back another hour later? He said, did you do yours yet? I was like, you just sent it to me an hour ago. He said, well, do yours. So then I did mine really quickly. He said, well, who should we send it to next? He said, send it to Tad. And I sent it to Tad. And then Tad sent it to the next person. And we had this chain going on. And he said, well, what do we do next? So I was just giving him my point of view of what we can do from a technological point of view. But then our team at Jazz at Lincoln Center got involved because I hadn't really seen the video capabilities of it. And then we started putting all that together. And we put the Quarantine Blues together. Now, the thing about it, it was a learning experience, not just for all of us, but for him too. So he said, look, we're going to do another one. I said, okay. He said, great, okay. He put it together, then he started assigning responsibilities. So a day after he assigned responsibilities, he said, did everybody do their thing yet? Then that exposed one thing that I didn't know about Wynton. See, when he says, we're going to do this tomorrow, he meant that he wanted you to do it yesterday. And that's how he is. He's just so proactive and energetic. He's saying, okay, let's keep this moving. So once he became exposed to the possibilities, then it was like, well, let's utilize this inside of what we have. And maybe what I'm trying to put together as a statement to say, don't focus on what you don't have, focus on what you do have. And make the most out of what you have at this time as you move forward so that when you come out of COVID-19, you will be moving in a positive direction and not moving from a standstill.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's beautiful, Victor. Thank you for sharing all that. And I want to point out to everybody, although we're in COVID and quarantine and all that kind of stuff, this has actually given us some opportunities that we otherwise would not have had. You know, we've done master classes now with Victor Goines here. We've done them with Marcus Printup, with Scotty Barnhart, with Charles McPherson. You know, we've been able to do so many things like this, and it's because of COVID, because we were exploring new possibilities. How can we keep this going? So like Mr. Goines is saying, utilize this time to grow and better yourselves. That's what I'm doing. You know, practice, focus on the music, transcribe, do things you don't have time to do during the school year when you're constantly running back and forth to do other projects. Focus on bettering yourself now. Find the positive in the situation. Be aware of the negative, you know, but don't let it control you. Find the positive, and there's so many great opportunities to grow during this time that we can focus on. And we've all talked about that before. It's about the journey, not the destination, and the journey never ends. So find a way to better yourself. Practice, you know, listen, transcribe, ask questions, you know, and you're going to find that there are other people older than you that can create opportunities for you to learn and grow in. And, you know, we're all going to be stronger when we come out the other side of this. And like Vic was saying, we're going to be at the gate ready to sprint, you know, and we're going to come out as the winners of the race, if you want to look at it in those terms. So be ready. You know, this is not the time to just lay on the couch and watch Netflix all the time. You know, we can still grow as people. We can still grow as a group. You know, and jazz music is very much about community and about playing together and feeding off each other. But we're still doing that. We're doing that right now. We're opening up conversations. We're actually communicating in certain ways better now than we did before. Because everybody's so hungry to communicate, and we can't all get in the room together, but we can create things like this to share ideas. You know, I know personally in my family, we do a family call every night at 8 o'clock with my mom and my brothers and sisters, and it's great. We're communicating more as a family now than we did before. So find the positive and focus on that, and we're all going to get out on the other side of this, and it's gonna be a different world in a positive way. All right? That was a great question, Kai. Thank you. So let's move. Yes, sir. And one thing also, man, I appreciate all of you showing gratitude the way you just did, Kai. You know, and you've all, you know, I've been noticing that about this group. You all show gratitude, and that goes a long way. And that's going to take you far in life. You know, music is, you know, learning music is really a lesson in life. And you all are very thoughtful and gracious. Thank you for that. I want to go on now to Mr. Miles Ray, because he's got such a cool name. Now, we've been going, guys, we've been going for over an hour. I want to ask Mr. Goines, is it cool if we keep going for a little while longer so we can get to everybody?
Doesn't feel like an hour, keep going.
Okay. We got two more students. I'm going to go with Miles next, if that's okay. Miles, what you got?
Well, first of all, you know, obviously I want to say thank you to Jazz Outreach Initiative. I mean, every now and again I get a master class, someone will pass through town and I'd sit and just watch. But, you know, after Jazz Outreach Initiative and LBYJO, now I'm seeing all these big legends right in front of me. And then Kenny's talking about how he puts a penny in between his plunger. And he's talking about his plunger. Crazy. But my question is, and this goes with not just with trumpet, but with soloing, because I'm hearing, I love lyrical and melodic solos like Chet Baker, Paul Desmond, and I always find myself when I'm soloing, I'm thinking of it too technically. I'm looking at all the chords and I'm saying, well, what can I do with this and that? And I just want to know, how can I get out of my own way, let myself relax when I'm playing?
Wow. Well, first of all, you answered a lot of questions already. Get out of your own way, you know, not be technical in terms of playing. You can be technical as long as you're lyrical and melodic. So that was deep, and that's a great question. You know, it's important that we keep the melodicism inside of what we play. In fact, I have my video that I'm working on for Summer Jazz Academy is talking about melody. And there was a time when many of the great solos in the history of our music were not based upon chord changes, but based upon the melodic or structure or the melody of the song. You know, bebop actually freed people from kind of playing only inside the chord changes and whatnot. But if you know the melody to the song, you can play a solo just improvising on the melody of the song, first of all. So I've run into situations where people have worked on chord changes all the time, and then you say, well, play this song. And they say, well, I don't know the melody to that. I was like, well, it would help if you learn the melody to the song to be able to play your solo. My good friend Wycliffe Gordon, one thing he does to work on that is he sings, scat sings that is, to improvisation and try to duplicate what he's scat singing so that the technical aspect of the theory is not the primary function in terms of his playing. You know, I got a flat nine, I have to play a diminished scale, this is a Dorian mode, let me play the Phrygian sign. You know, all of that is fine to know, but that's not gonna make you a better player. What you can ultimately hear is gonna make you a better player, and singing it will help you to be a better player. So, you know, working on improvising slowly so you can hear those things along the way and sing really what you're trying to hear, practicing your horn so you could be familiar enough with it so that if you find yourself playing in a key that's not as familiar to you as you would like it to be, then you can work that out really, really slowly. And you're not limited to key signatures and things like that. Working on your technique so when the tempo gets faster, you can articulate it inside of a faster tempo. But also realizing that complexity doesn't always come out of the most complex things. They can come out of the most simplistic things. So we think about complexity in terms of solos, maybe like Clifford Brown playing Cherokee. But then I like to see 10 trumpeters in a row and 10 trumpeters get up in a row and play something like the beginning of Western Blues, which is just an arpeggio, as I remember, right, Kenny? Your mic is off.
Talking about the intro?
Right?
Yeah.
So that's just a lot of arpeggios going on. So one would say that's not very complex. Man, I have seen more trumpet players slip, fall, hurt themselves, and everything else trying to just get past the introduction of Western Blues.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. So everything has a complexity inside of it. So I would say practice slowly. Try to work on scatting so that you can hear what you're singing. Working on things slowly and thinking about how it fits in the space of where you're trying to play. Because if you can't conceptualize the space that things are fitting in, that becomes a little bit of a problem along the way. Just so many ways. There's not one way you can, that's the only way of doing it. There's so many ways you can do it. But certainly checking out the various people who came before you will help you to be a better player. It doesn't hurt to understand the terminology and all of the theory involved in it, but is it really required? Not if you're so familiar with it and you knew all of it, it would not get in your way. The other thing also I would recommend, Miles, is to realize that Hokie Carmichael once said about Stardust, I think the story goes, somebody said, well, how'd you write such a beautiful tune? He said, oh man, I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just took the 12 notes and arranged it in this order. It was the same 12 notes, but it created a tune that we know is one of the most magnificent to be played. And the point I'm making is that as opposed to trying to learn 200 tunes this particular summer, try to learn one tune 200 ways. Because it's using all of the same 12 notes and it's all of the same theory and all the same harmony. It's just kind of rearranged by whoever the composer or the arranger is. So if you hear a major chord in this song, it's the same major chord that's in another song. If you hear it in another key, it's the same one as that one. There's so many similarities to these things along the way. And if you could try to realize how they all are in common to each other, they all have a commonality, then you will be utilizing all of these same things on every tune, and they're not separate entities to themselves. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, but you already on your way. One is get out of your own way. Practice as much as you can. Don't think about easy and difficult. James Moody once told me, no such thing as easy and difficult, only familiar and unfamiliar. If you do it enough, it's so familiar to you that it seems what? Easy. All right?
Awesome.
That's great advice. Thank you, Vic. Now, Miles, what year are you going into?
I'm going into my sophomore year.
Your sophomore year. And your dad, Andy, is a great trumpet player, right? Did you learn to play from your dad?
No, he wasn't a good enough teacher for that. It was tough. I would be playing stuff on the mouthpiece, and he would go, "What the hell are you doing?"
Now, he's been playing with the Righteous Brothers for years, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, being around
So
the
he
rock.
must be a really good player because he said, "Man, I'm not gonna mess with this teacher."
No, Wes is doing that. Wes Marshall.
Great, he's a great teacher. Thanks, Miles. All right, so the final student we're going to go to is our lead tenor player, plays first tenor in the band. His name is Ian Cruz. Ian, what you got? I'm not hearing you.
Hello?
You're a little bit closer.
Hello.
There we go. Got you.
Okay, we good?
Yeah.
Hi there. First off, again, like everybody else has said, thank you. This opportunity is insane. I would have never thought, joining middle school, 6th grade, playing alto sax, thinking that it would get me here, It's a crazy experience, and I'm thankful for everybody that's been a part of it. And my question for you, Mr. Goines, is if you were to make a all-star like combo of musicians, dead or alive, whether you're in it or not, I wanted to know who would be a part of it.
Wow. I don't know if I can come up with a list that quickly for you, but I'm gonna actually quote one thing that they say Duke Ellington said. They asked Duke that same question. If you can have a band of anybody you wanted, who would you select? He said, I would like all of the chairs to be filled with Louis Armstrong. That's it.
Yeah.
Louis Armstrong in every chair. And then I would have everything I ever wanted.
Yeah.
I don't know who I would want, to be honest with. I want to have. There's so many options that I would have to struggle with picking along the way. I probably would waste my time trying to weed out who could do it and who would do it. But since I don't have that much time, I'm gonna settle for the guys and girl that I play with every day at the Jazz and Lincoln Orchestra.
Okay.
It's been a very good decision for the past 25 years, so I'm gonna stick with that for now.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Cool. Thank you, Vic. We've heard from all the students.
Kenny?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe tag on to that Victor said. For me personally, if I was going to ever sit in with a band, I wouldn't be looking in the past. I would be looking at these kids right here. They're the future of jazz, and I would sit in this band in 5 years, twice on Sundays and every other day of the week.
There you
Right
go.
on. Thank you, Donnie. That's beautiful, man. Well,
Kenny, one more thing. Do we have
yes,
any
sir.
questions from our leaders in this organization? Maybe they have some questions they would like to ask.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go next. Kurt, Donnie, Gary, Lauren, do you guys have any questions for Victor? Guess not. Okay.
Kenny, I don't have any questions, but as a consumer of music, I don't really play as much as I used to back in the day, but I was really inspired to learn about this piece of music because this is my 30th year in business, and I know these business quotes, and I feel like the quotes of Calvin Coolidge, 1925, business of America is business, and The Economist, that reminded me of Milton Friedman's famous quote, "The business of business is business." How somebody like me, who is a consumer of arts, it's so important for these young student musicians as players, I think, to really absorb these kinds of experiences, the music that you're going to be playing, and then for me as a listener, to learn about this music even before I turn it on. You know, Kurt Miller sent me the link to the video yesterday, but I didn't listen to it until I tried to get a grasp of what was Victor trying to say to the world. And then, you know, he doesn't know me, but if he did, what would he be trying to say to me as a business owner? And so I thought about this, and I was thinking about the business of America as business and the business of business as business, and what these two comments I think have similarity in is that both of them were followed by spectacular economic downturns, and you know, of course, the worst, as Victor said earlier, was the 29 stock market crash just 4 years after Coolidge made that quote. And of course, if you think about how the arts are impacted by the temperature of a country, you think about in the 1920s when the country was awash in cash, and then in the 1930s, you know, his brother, can you spare a dime? Very different kinds of feelings in terms of how music was approached. And I think what's missing from those business philosophies was what I call the common good principle, that the benefit of a good business goes beyond the boardroom and the shareholders and improves the community, advances culture, and I think broadens understanding. And if you think about music as a business and thinking about how successful Jazz at Lincoln Center is, they really have three, I mean, more than this, but obviously three main components. They have passion, they have art, and they have business. And if you think about business as a business, like all other businesses, there must be an integrity of purpose that drives the profitability. Whether you're an independent musician, like these young student musicians are probably right now, asked to work for free for exposure, or if you're a nonprofit asked to produce programs without a financial benefit, it's important to focus on what you do, not only as a passionate art form, but think of it as a business, because only if you are yourself financially successful can you also improve your community, advance your culture, and broaden understanding. So as a consumer of music, that's really what I took out of this before I listened to the music. It's so important, I think, for student musicians to think about these kinds of things and what it applies to you very personally, because when you interpret art, it's very personal and unique to each one of you, and how you approach that ultimately affects not only how you play it, but how you consume it.
Mm-hmm. And also, if I can just comment to what you're saying, you know, when this whole thing took place, that the social distancing we're in, and so many small businesses had to close down, it kind of helped. Unfortunately, it clearly defined what it meant to be a small business owner in America. We think of so many companies we go to, I can't really pick one out of the, you know, a supermarket chain that might seem large as a large business, but it's actually small business. Big business is something on a whole nother kind of national level. So many things have been closed down that we just didn't think to be small business. And America is run by small businesses primarily. I mean, consumers we depend on them so much. As a musician, I want to say with that statement is that in the past 20 years, I always wondered why entertainers failed, you know, and who are entertainers? Musicians, obviously, artists, athletes, you know, actors, actresses, you know, and why do they fail? You know, there were a number of actors and actresses who went bankrupt because they didn't pay their taxes. You look at professional athletics, people make millions of dollars, millions of dollars. I can't understand why somebody would make $1 million every year, and in the 11th year, they would be broke. Because they didn't take care of business, because they allow other people to persuade them to do different kind of things. So the ultimate conclusion I've come up with is that artists do not fail because they cannot do what they do well. We know a lot of people who do what they do well, and people who have done what they do or what they did well. The problem is they just couldn't take care of business. And as a result, they unfortunately have to deal with the repercussions of what that means, because all of us have a finite time. to exist where we're going to maximize our productivity. For some people, like basketball players, it's 10 to 15 years. For classical musicians, some of them make a decision to do it for 30 to 50 years, like Stanley Drucker of the New York Philharmonic, who retired about 5 years ago. I couldn't understand why Stanley Drucker will retire. He's Stanley Drucker, one of the greatest clarinet players ever. And when I asked some of his students about it, they say, well, he concluded that he couldn't do what he did like he did it 50 years ago, so therefore he walked away from it. So we have a finite time that we're faced with doing what we do. Wynton and I talk about this all the time. He said, hey, look, we can't do this forever. Our time is going to ultimately shift, and when we step out of that time, it will be your time. And people like all of our leaders in the room, what they're working on ultimately is to prepare you to be able to step into these positions of leadership and be successful. And if that is to be a jazz musician or a politician or a banker or whatever it is, the experiences that you're dealing with right now with Joy is actually going to provide you with the information you need to be a leader. And we need good leaders. We need leaders with integrity, with purpose, with intent, who can be clear thinkers when times like the one we're dealing with arrive. And we hope that there will never be another pandemic when we get through this one, but anything could happen. So the preparation of it is to utilize this time as you're studying with this orchestra to realize how it's going to impact everything that you do along the way.
That's beautiful, man. Thank you, Vic. I'm thinking about future leaders. I think Kai has eventually become president. What do you think about that, Kai?
Look at his face.
I don't know.
All right, Gary, Lauren, or Kurt, do you guys have anything you'd like to add before we wrap things up?
Write something for strings.
I actually did.
You did? Yay!
But I'm working on my skills in that area to become more familiar with it. But Wynton has a piece called A Soldier's Tale, I think it is. I think he's written a lot for strings. You should check it out. Look in his library online, and you can find some of that. But that's my next thing. I love the chamber orchestra. And last January, I went to Cuba and I wrote, I think, 7 arrangements that we played with an orchestra down there, and a jazz quartet and a string orchestra. So I'm looking at exploring and expanding upon that more.
That's interesting, Vic. You know, I'm doing the same thing. Vic, I think, played at Dizzy's with a string quartet and jazz quartet not too long ago, and I've actually done that in Las Vegas with Lauren on you know, principal violin as a concert mistress. Is that the proper way to? Yeah. And Gary actually orchestrated it. Gary's a very skilled orchestrator. And you were saying something, Lauren. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You got something else you want to say?
I already forgot. It's gone.
Okay, I'm sorry. Kurt, you got anything?
Yeah, so it's a little less about the personal playing thing and more about being on the incredible band you guys are on. You know, we all, me being a little older, you know, have had the chance to play around the world and play for good audiences and bad. With you guys being such an unbelievable orchestra, I've had a chance to hear it twice live here in Vegas. I'm moved to tears every time. Is there a place you go in the world that you always know that connection with the audience is, you know, it's just like those magical moments? I mean, is it specific to any different countries, or does it just kind of be random? I mean, I'm curious about that. I mean, some people say they go over to Europe and you know, or Japan, and the crowds are just incredible, you know. So I'm just curious what you guys have found traveling around the world.
I think for me, there's an anticipation of what some audiences may be as compared to others, based upon the familiarity and the repetition of which you frequent those places. Marseilles, France is a place that I've been many, many times with the septet. And we have been so many times that the community actually knows. You know, people will stop us and talk to us as if we are members of the community, which is a great feeling. Vitoria, Spain was another place like that. They had a great promoter named Iñaki, who lived out there. He brought us there almost every other year. And but there's always that unknown. You know, you never know how the response is going to be. And that's a little bit like nerves. You know, people say, do you ever get nervous when you play? I say, every single time.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's a negative thing. That's a positive thing, because the nerves are important to make me want to be better than what I've been the last time I'm there, you know? So many places, man. Being with Jazz at Lincoln Center, and not to sound like a broken record or playing his horn for him, because he's very capable of playing his own horn, and I'm speaking about Wynton. But traveling in that company has opened up doors that would have been very, very challenging to have open. And not just concert halls, people's homes. You know, we go certain places and we're invited to, last time we were in Brazil, we were invited to the promoter's home to have like a churro party, they call it. And we got there and they brought in a lot of the local Brazilian musicians to come in and just interact with us. So we went to another place called Recife, Brazil. And we've just been places where we might have been invited as an artist if we had the right connections to go play, but then that extra something to be in someone's home and meet someone's family and be on their vineyard or be in their very small house, you know, whether it's one of very modest means or one of very extraordinary means. We've just experienced the gamut of all of that, and it's been very touching. We spoke earlier about respect and humility. The music has allowed us to have an extraordinary amount of humility based upon all of the people I have met. You know, and people often say, who are some of the nicest people you've ever met? They're on this Zoom call right now. These are some of the nicest people I've ever met. And I look forward to the next set of people I'll get to meet as well.
Excellent. That's great. Yeah, I love those stories. Just, you know, being able to travel around the world and listen to what you guys have been able to do and the people you get to meet. That's great.
So I just want to add one thing for my younger musicians. One thing I want them to understand about just it's some of what Victor's saying is from his perspective, but the important thing to understand is the volume and the amount of work that we will do. Like now we have to fight to survive because our bills are so unbelievably, astronomically huge because we have so many people that we don't see how we're going to make it. We don't have gigs. We can't rent our building. We can't do anything. But because I know who I'm working with, and over these years, for each other, we give up Christmas holidays, practice on parts day and night. We'll do stuff that's extremely uncommon. And it's all the years of doing that. And the same goes for Kenny. Like it could be something he does not want to do. We've had heated words. It's the world we live in. It's not like a Disney movie where everybody's smiling all the time or we love each other all the time. We have very tense moments. One night, Victor and I were arguing and fighting so hard, Ali Jackson, our drummer, knocked on the door from that. He didn't know it was us. He said, when he thought it was me and Victor there, he said, man, are y'all all right? You know, so I want y'all to understand it. I mean, it's just this life. Now we getting up mid 60 years old. I mean, we're not children. And, you know, we the age of people are with grandchildren. And a lot of our friends we play with have grandchildren. But what's underneath what he's saying, yeah, we've been in a lot of places, but we have manners. Like when Victor called me about Joe, he was talking about my respect. Hey, man, check your respect level. We brought our way of life to wherever we went. Like when we see Kenny's mama come somewhere, it's like it's our mama is there. So it's a certain level of respect. As that has fallen apart in our country, we have more of it. Like I respect Kenny Rampton. I'm on this call. I'm rushing to finish my classes. As Victor has to turn his in too. And I don't know where Kenny is on his.
I turned all mine in. I'm done. I'm ready.
I'm literally working. I am not joking with you. I'm literally working around the clock for the last 3 or 4 days, cutting and pasting. It's not a joke, but we on here because of the love we have for each other, for the music, for what everybody. Kurt, it doesn't matter who it is. There's a certain love that's got to be and stuff. And when you love something, you're gonna pay dues for it. You know, and life is not a game. So that's all. I don't want to. I just want to say that to go with what you're saying.
don't get off the phone. You ain't got to put on your video, but I'm gonna tell my one story now. So, so recently, Wynton called me. I have pretty good computer skills. So Wynton said, hey man, look, Miles's birthday is coming up. Can you do a video for us? I said, yeah, man, when? He said, and then it was this silence. I said, man, you mean like tomorrow? I think he turned off his mic. I said, yeah, tomorrow. He said, yeah, tomorrow. I said, okay, so I did it. And then after I did it, well, I asked him clearly. I said, hey man, what do you want? He said, be creative. I said, okay, so I put in all this creativity. And then he called me back with a long, long list of what he wanted to have edited. I said, okay, man. So I stayed up again all night the next night and I did it. But I had some things I had to do at school. So I said, when I finish school, at Northwestern that is, I said, when I finish school, I'll call you. So I probably would finish around 4 o'clock, but it took me a lot longer. And he was waiting. So at 7 o'clock, he wrote me, he said, is it after school yet?
Man, I just do that to you because 1967. No,
right.
but you gotta be willing to work. That's all. You know, if you're willing to put in that work, you have those experiences, and we laugh about it. But when we're going through it, we're not always laughing.
That was Victor was referencing the walk-in video we did with the trumpet section. If anybody saw that.
Yeah.
Thanks for your work on that, Vic.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Unless if Victor's got anything to say to wrap things up, we can wrap things up. If you got anything left, Vic, you want to say to everybody?
Well, I want to thank you all, first of all, for playing my music. That's always such an honor because there's so many people waiting in line to have their music played. And that's a rarity to have not only the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra played, but your orchestra to play it. Because you had a lot of things you could have selected. You picked mine. So I'm very, very appreciative of that. I'm so impressed by the intellect that's in the room right now, and of all ages, from 11 to those who are going into college. Continue to grow, continue to research. Don't get tired when everybody, if you want to survive, when everybody else gets tired, then you get up and get more energetic. You know, I always use the basketball game of Michael Jordan as an example. You know, I think one of his successes is that when everybody got tired in the fourth quarter, he was ready to go. Whether he was pacing himself or not, that's a different conversation. But the great people figure out how to do that work that Wynton was talking about in the last part of the game and whatnot. So I encourage you all to realize some of you all are in your end game in high school and your starting game in college, your mid game in middle school and whatnot. But wherever you're at, continue to work hard, because those who do work hard will see the benefits of it in the long run. To all of my instructors and mentors and all of that, congratulations and thank you so much for all that you do, because without you, we couldn't do it. And to Kenny, you know, being someone who works at Northwestern and someone who works for Jazz at Lincoln Center and going to school, I know being in charge of multiple organizations is no easy job. I mean, I know the day starts early and it ends late, very, very often. You know, you're dealing with people who may be family, and you may be dealing with new people you get to work with. So you get to learn people in different kind of ways, but all of the adversities that you're dealing with are well worth it. And you can see it by the young lives that you're affecting in the room. So congratulations to all of y'all. Continued success. Stay in touch. Reach out anytime. Mr. Rampton has my email and my phone number. You know, call me. You have to be persistent sometime. I have like 100,000 emails, but I check them, you know, and I keep in touch and kind of see what's happening. But I look forward to hearing from all of you all and to see where you're at in the future, in the times to come. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Victor. It's an honor anytime to get to talk with you. I want to ask everybody to please unmute Zoom right now, and I want everybody to please show Victor and Wynton some gratitude with a round of applause. Woo! Please unmute.
Absolutely.
Thank you both for joining us and being a part of this. And I just want to make mention also, I made mention of the relationship between Victor and Wynton and how long that's been going on. And you guys are going to nurture your friendships the rest of your lives. And I want to point out that the relationships that we have within Joy with Jazz Outreach Initiative. Donnie, our executive director, he and I went to high school together. Gary and I have been best friends since college. Kurt, I've known the longest. He used to play with my dad. I've known him since I was in high school, since I was a kid. And it's just an honor to work with all you guys, so thank you. And sorry, I get emotional.
That's okay. That's why we love you, buddy.
That's why we love you, brothers.
Yeah, man.
So this is our final thing for the Las Vegas Youth Jazz Orchestra this semester. Thank you guys for all being a part of this. Many of you will be part of it next semester and moving forward, and it is an honor to know all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. All right.
Yeah, you ready, Kenny? Yeah.
Thank you, Wynton. Vic.
All right. Take care. Have a great one. Be safe.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man.